It's Harvey from Weather Sponge 5000. Today is May 1st, 2021, and today we're going to forecast the weather conditions you should experience for May all across the United States. Will it be warmer than average in your location? Will it be more moist than average? Will it be more wet, more dry than average? I will answer all those questions in this video for your specific region. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe. If you want to see more weather icons, make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather icons. So before I show you my forecast map for each region of the United States for this May, we have to look at what will determine the average sort of conditions you should experience for the month of May. And the first thing we need to take a look at, and probably one of the most important, is the Nino sea surface temperatures anomaly, or the Oceanic Nino Index, which pretty much determines what type of pattern you should experience all throughout the United States, where right around and as you can see, right about May 2020, we've been in below average sea surface temperatures for most of the year, and this continues onward all the way to March 2021. So like I've been saying in my tons of previous forecast videos, we have been in a La Nina for several months now, extending from June or July of 2020, and it's one of the reasons why we had such a strong hurricane season last year, and one of the reasons why it was a lot colder than average for a lot of the northern portion of the United States, since La Ninas are known for pronounced jet stream dips. And you see that temperatures have been lower than the negative 0.5 degree Celsius threshold, which means that we have been in a La Nina. However, of course, if you take a look at the recent temperatures, especially in the Nino 3.4 region, the region that's pretty much synonymous of weather with forecasting whether we're in El Nino or La Nina, you see that over the past several months, the sea surface temperatures have been rising. So as a result, the National Weather Service has been forecasting this the current La Nina phase to eventually change over and evolve into a neutral phase as a result of the rising sea surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific region, where we see that right around the November and October of 2020, the sea surface temperatures peaked when it came to how much below anomalous it was in the below average in the below average area. However, you see that over the past several months, ever since December, we've been seeing a warming of the sea surface temperatures all throughout the equator, or at least the Nino 3.4 region of the equatorial Pacific, which means that we are slowly but surely evolving and entering into a new weather pattern that's bound to occur over the next several months and into May. If we were to take a look at the current forecasts, when it comes to our next Enzo pattern, you see that for the month of May, it's an 80% chance that we're going to be in a neutral phase, with only around a 15% chance of a La Nina pattern happening, and only pretty much an impossible 5% chance of El Nino occurring for the month of May. So as a result, we must make our May forecast that mimics how a neutral season is typically like. And if we were to take a look at that, you see that the neutral season isn't that much different than what you'd experience during a La Nina. We see a pronounced jet stream dip, which brings cooler than average conditions throughout the northern Midwest as well as the Northeast, warmer than average conditions all throughout the southern United States, with more specifically the Southeast United States experiencing more moist than average conditions for the neutral season. So this is one factor we need to keep in mind when making this forecast. Neutral season pretty much favors a more cooler than average temperatures throughout the northern United States and warmer than average temperatures throughout the southern United States, which really gives which really gives a good idea of what type of conditions we'll experience, what type of temperatures, and how much moisture we will experience for a lot of the United States. However, that's far from the only factor we need to take a look at to determine what type of weather conditions you should experience for the month of May, because while the Enzo neutral pattern certainly will have a big effect on what type of weather conditions you'll experience for the month of May, it still isn't there's still a lot of other factors that could potentially change what type of weather conditions you might experience for the month of May. And one of those is the drought situation all throughout the United States. So you see that for most of the eastern half of the United States, most of it isn't in a drought. Maybe some areas right around Michigan, the Great Lakes region, and New England is now beginning to get in a drought. But for the most part, most of the eastern half of the United States isn't in the drought. However, if you go, let's say, west of, I'd say, Kansas City, it's more likely you will be in a drought-stricken region where a lot of the southwest United States has been under a severe drought, where we're seeing the darker reds, which represent just a very anomalous drought that's occurring in those regions. And even in the Pacific Northwest, they're experiencing a drought, the northern Midwest, and a lot of Texas as well, which is the reason why the severe weather throughout the Midwest has been limited for this year, and mainly been limited to impacting the Southeast for most of 2021. And the drought is the main primary reason why. And like I said in my previous forecast videos, droughts do not go away overnight. So it's unlikely that within just a month or less than a month that we're going to see this drought completely disappear, and we're going to see average normal moisture levels and humidity levels and precipitation rates all throughout the western half of the United States. So as a result of this drought, it's pretty much safe to say that we should expect drier than average conditions all throughout the western half of the United States. And along with that, warmer than average conditions should be expected, because obviously when there's a drought, there isn't as many clouds in the sky to block or reflect back that shortwave radiation from the sun. So that shortwave radiation from the sun has nowhere to go but hit the surface and warm up a lot of the cities and the states all throughout the western half of the United States. So as a result of this severe drought throughout the western half of the United States, you should experience drier and more warmer than average conditions throughout the western half of the United States. So we need to keep in mind that. And this coincides with the neutral pattern that I was talking about, which typically brings warmer than average conditions throughout the western half of the United States. So the combination of this drought in the western half of the United States and Enzo neutral pattern, which typically does bring warmer and drier than average conditions to the United States, it's pretty much very likely that it's going to be drier and warmer than average all throughout the western half of the United States. As for the eastern half, as for the eastern half, we aren't in a drought, so you guys are certainly bound to receive heavy rainfall events, since there isn't a dominating ridge that's going to be difficult to get rid of, unlike the western half of the United States. And there's a lot of moisture along the surface for the atmosphere to evaporate. So there's certainly the possibility of heavy rainstorm events for the eastern half of the United States, especially since, like I said, we're in an Enzo neutral pattern, which does bring more moist than average conditions throughout the southeast, and more jet stream dips, which are bound to create areas of unstable air all throughout the eastern half of the United States to create a more wet than average than typical May for a lot of the eastern half of the United States. But there are still other factors to determine how much rain and how much and the temperature throughout the eastern half of the United States, more than just the Enzo pattern and the drought monitor. The computer models will help us with that, as the computer models pretty much synthesize all the data that we track all throughout the United States when it comes to weather conditions. And once it synthesizes that data, it looks back at historical data from with pretty much a 100 to 50 year history of the weather conditions throughout the United States, and it compares that data to years that were very similar to it, or the most similar to the type of conditions we're experiencing now, and it makes a forecast based off of what happened that season. And based off of what the computer models are saying, the climatology computer models, the CFS model, you see that it's agreeing that most of the southern United States will be under warmer than average weather conditions, and I assume a lot of it has to do with the enso neutral pattern, which has a major effect on how warm it is and how cold it is throughout the United States. And you see that this warmth extends the western half of the United States, of course, because they are in a drought. So you guys are bound to experience more warmer than average conditions when there aren't any clouds blocking the shortwave radiation from the sun. However, what's interesting is that the CFS model is forecasting cooler than average conditions throughout the Northeast, and mainly average to at times below average right around the northern Midwest temperatures throughout the Midwest pretty much. And this coincides pretty much with an enso neutral pattern, as I assume the CFS model is sort of mimicking the enso neutral pattern, since obviously the Nino 3.4 sea surface temperatures have a major effect on the weather pattern throughout the United States. So as a result, warmer than average temperatures throughout the western half and the southern United States should be expected, and cooler than average conditions, I'd say, should be expected throughout the northern Midwest and the Northeast as a result of an enso neutral pattern, and it's expected to be more moist than average as a result of a more pronounced jet stream dip due to an enso neutral pattern. However, that's not the only factor we need to keep in mind. We also need to keep in mind of the more short-term factors, such as the Arctic oscillation, because of course we are already in May, so we could at least forecast what's going to happen over the next week or two when it comes to temperatures and potentially even the amount of precipitation. And as you can see, this Arctic oscillation, we've been in a negative phase for quite some time. It started right around the end of April, so it's been, I'd say, a couple of days or a little over a week we've been in negative Arctic oscillation, but it isn't anywhere near as negative as, let's say, what we experienced in February, which is one of the primary reasons why we saw so many snowstorms and so many storms in general for the month of February this year. But a negative Arctic oscillation means that you would experience more jet stream dips, which as a result creates more severe weather overall for a lot of the United States, and more cooler than average conditions. But you see that for the next 2 weeks, the forecast for the Arctic oscillation is mainly leaning towards neutral sort of pattern, which means that we're bound to at least get some jet stream dips, but not so much where it'll be anomalous, or we won't get temperatures that will be so much warmer than average to where it'll be anomalous. It's with a neutral Arctic oscillation, I'd say average conditions should be expected. However, it won't be enough to completely outweigh the effect the drought in the western half of the United States is going to bring, and as well as the enso pattern throughout the United States, an enso neutral pattern. So as a result, I'd put more weight on the enso neutral pattern and the CFS model and the drought monitor than, let's say, the Arctic oscillation at this point, because the Arctic oscillation is expected to be neutral over the next 2 weeks. And another factor we need to keep in mind also that could maybe change what type of weather conditions you'll experience is the sea surface temperatures. And you see that throughout the eastern half of the United States, the sea surface temperatures are below average for a lot of the Gulf Coast and even extending to the Carolina coast, which I'd say that could make an effect on the type of weather conditions you'll experience in the southeast, because if the sea surface temperatures are cooler than average, then there's less unstable air in this region. There's less lift in the atmosphere as a result of cooler than average temperatures. So that might mean you might experience less precipitation events throughout the southeast. However, I think again the enso neutral pattern and what the CFS model is forecasting will outweigh the fact that there's below average sea surface temperatures just off the Gulf Coast and the Carolina coast. So I'd still expect a more wet than average more wet than average weather conditions throughout the eastern half of the United States. And in terms of my overall forecast, this is a map you guys all been waiting for. You see that for a lot of the eastern half of the United States, I'm expecting more warmer and moist conditions as a result of an enso-neutral pattern, which typically brings warmer and wetter than average conditions throughout the southeast and as well as the East Coast in general, since there's more jet stream dips to induce unstable air and create more convection and precipitation throughout the eastern half of the United States. And you see that for the Northeast and the northern Midwest states. I predict cooler, and I expect this May to be cooler and more wet than average as a result of the jet stream dip, thanks to an enso-neutral pattern. And the CFS model does also agree with it for the most part, where it's forecasting cooler than average conditions for a lot of the northern United States, especially the Northeast. And I expect above average severe weather throughout the Southeast. I'd say right around the Mississippi River Valley should experience the worst, because not only is it going to be more moist than average, the enso-neutral pattern is going to bring more jet stream dips to induce severe weather. And I suspect since it's going to be much more moist than average, like the CFS model is saying, I didn't show you guys a precipitation for the CFS model. Let me show you guys that right now, where you see the CFS model is predicting just very moist conditions throughout the eastern half of the United States. So I expect just a lot of thunderstorm activity as a result of how humid it'll be, and just a lot of heavy rain threats throughout the eastern half of the United States, which coincides with the enso-neutral pattern, which typically does bring those conditions. And you see for a lot of the western half of the United States, I expect it to be much more dry and warmer than average as a result of an ongoing drought, which is unlikely to change over the next month, since droughts do not go away overnight. It takes time. It really takes the atmosphere time to adjust to a more wet conditions. And I don't think a month or less than a month is enough time for the weather pattern to completely change for the western half of the United States. So I expect drought conditions to continue, and an enso-neutral pattern typically does bring drier and warmer than average conditions throughout the western half of the United States. So I expect that as well. So this is my May forecast for 2021. And yeah, guys, make sure to enjoy it throughout the western half of the United States. While it is concerning that there's a drought, it's going to be nice and sunny, very warm, so enjoy it there. And for the eastern half, I do still expect there's of course going to be sunny days throughout the eastern half of the United States. However, it is more likely you're going to experience more moist and more rain days than what you typically see for May. So keep in mind of that for the month of May. But yeah, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather recalls. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather content. And I hope you guys have a good day.